You're ready? I'd like to call the meeting to order for the Board of Embalmers and Funeral Directors. It's January 21st, 2016, 1:07 p.m. in the afternoon. And thanks for attending, and hope everybody has a good, happy new year this year. And we got a roll call, please.
Gregory Boyer,
Here.
Robert Wasco,
Here.
Ryan Chandler,
Here.
Jack Marchbanks,
Present.
Tommy Tanner.
Here.
Item 1.02, consideration of the December 2015 minutes. Has everybody had a chance to review all the minutes? And we have a motion to accept the minutes.
Based on review, and make a motion to accept.
I'll second the motion.
Do we have any discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Wasco,
Yes.
Mr. Marchbanks,
Yes.
Mr. Chandler,
Yes.
Mr. Tanner,
Abstain.
Mr. Boyer.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Item 2.01, persons appearing before the board. We have a Christine Broberg for the dual reciprocal applicant from Michigan. If you'd like to step up before the board and tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're here today.
First of all, thank you very much for meeting with me today. And I am currently a licensed funeral director in Kalamazoo, Portage, Michigan area for Life Story Funeral Homes. And I've been offered a position with Lane Funeral Homes in Youngstown, doing the same thing, which is just being a good old-fashioned funeral director. And my husband and I decided that we'd like to take that jump and move into Ohio. So I'm just looking for your approval to continue being a funeral director and doing what I do best only here in the state of Ohio.
Where did you attend mortuary college at?
I went to Wayne State University back in 95. I graduated in 95.
Are you planning on selling pre-need here in Ohio?
I'm sorry?
Are you planning on selling like pre-need funeral contracts? here in
Currently
Ohio?
not at this time, but that could change with the course of my employment. But I don't currently have a pre-need license for selling insurance.
In Michigan,
Correct.
Mr. Chairman, did you have any issues with the state board in Michigan at all? Anything against your license?
None. Nope, I've been happily and complaint-free licensed since 1996.
Any other questions?
Are you aware of the continuing education requirements here in Ohio?
I am. I'm not up to speed on them completely, but I do know that you have them and plan on participating fully with that. And actually, I'm glad that your state does, because that's something that I've been trying to work with. I'm on the Michigan Funeral Directors Association Board as a district director, and it's one of my platforms is pushing for that in Michigan.
They have no continuing ed in Michigan? No?
It's all volunteer right now. Nothing required.
Any more questions, anybody?
I make a motion to approve Christine be able to sit for the boards.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Chandler,
Yes.
Mr. Tanner,
Yes.
Mr. Marchbanks,
Yes.
Mr. Wasco,
Yes.
Mr. Boyer.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Welcome to Ohio and welcome to Youngstown. That's where I'm from.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm excited about it. Hopefully, as long as everything goes well, I'll be there in March.
Very good.
Thank you.
And you don't have to stay for the rest of the meeting. If you'd like to, you can. If you would like to leave, that's also an option.
I appreciate that because I have a 5-hour drive home. So
Okay.
thank you.
Okay.
My current employer doesn't know yet, so
Okay.
I have to be at work in the morning.
Okay, okay, thank you for coming. And that's Item 2.02, request to serve apprenticeship under 2 masters for Kaylin Napick?
Mr. Chairman, based on reviewing the request, and based on the previous motions of the board, I would make a motion to approve the request to serve the apprenticeship under two masters.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Any discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Tanner?
Yes.
Mr. Chandler?
Yes.
Mr. Marchbanks?
Yes.
Mr. Boyer?
Yes.
Mr. Wasco?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Item 2.03, recommended individual licenses. We have several here before us, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9 of them. So we'll need a motion to approve.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Are we doing the reinstatement as well, or just the new licenses?
So it's.
It's reinstatement also.
Oh,
So new licenses and reinstatement.
You're okay with that?
let me withdraw that motion.
Okay.
So do we have a motion for new licenses and reinstatement?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question on the reinstatement of license 7193. My question is, was this a license that was inactive and then became active, and were all the qualifications met to be active again?
Yes.
Okay. How long was the license inactive for? Do we know?
I do not.
Okay.
It was an extended period of time, years.
It was years?
Mhm.
And so under the new rules, were the capping of the reinstatement that took because of the new rules where it was an unlimited amount, $50 per license per month, I think it was?
The new law made it more conducive for him to reinstate the license
Okay.
because it was less of a penalty.
Because it was capped? Okay. I mean, this is one of the first ones I've seen in a while with that. And I just wanted to see if the new law helped this person get their license reinstated. Okay. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to assume everybody else met the qualifications for licensing.
Yes.
Roll call?
Mr. Chandler?
Yes.
Mr. Tanner?
Yes.
Mr. Wasco?
Yes.
Mr. Boyer?
Yes.
Mr. Marchbanks?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Item 2.04, recommended facility licenses. One is for a new building, new facility, new funeral home license. And the other two are change of ownership, existing facility, and new funeral home license. Do we have a motion to approve?
I'll make that motion.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Boyer?
Yes.
Mr. Wasco?
Yes.
Mr. Marchbanks?
Yes.
Mr. Tanner?
Yes.
Mr. Chandler?
Yes.
Motion passes.
And item 2.05, and it's just a no motion item. It's information for individuals being issued a registration number, individuals being certified as an apprentice, and change of manager and/or AIC, and paperwork previously approved for a new funeral home number for funeral homes. And it's just an information item only. So we'll be moving on to continuing education. Item 3.01, continuing education exemptions. We have a 50-year exemption for a Dennis L. Welling. Can we have a motion to approve?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Do we have a second?
I'll second
Any discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Marchbanks?
Yes.
Mr. Tanner?
Yes.
Mr. Chandler?
Yes.
Mr. Boyer?
Yes.
Mr. Wasco?
Yes.
Motion passes.
And we have item 3.02, continuing education programs. We need a recommendation to approve. These are continuing education programs that will be put on by several organizations.
After the review with our staff committee to approve, or to recommend these, I make a motion to approve.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that motion.
Any discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Wasco?
Yes.
Mr. Marchbanks?
Yes.
Mr. Tanner?
Yes.
Mr. Chandler?
Yes.
Mr. Boyer?
Yes.
Motion passes.
And we're moving on to compliance. 4.01, ratification of settlement number 1. Everybody had a chance to look at these items? Do we have a motion to ratify proposed settlement agreement?
Mr. Chairman, based on the advice of our legal counsel, I move to ratify settlement agreement number 1, 4.01.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Marchbanks?
Yes.
Mr. Wasco?
Yes.
Mr. Chandler?
Yes.
Mr. Tanner?
Yes.
Mr. Boyer?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Item 4.02, ratification of settlement number 2. If everybody's had a chance to look at the ratification of the settlement. And do we have a motion?
In sticking with legal counsel's suggestion, I move to propose ratify the settlement.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Tanner?
Yes.
Mr. Marchbanks?
Yes.
Mr. Chandler?
Yes.
Mr. Wasco?
Yes.
Mr. Boyer?
Yes.
Motion passes.
And ratification of settlement number 3. Everybody's had a chance to look at it. We'll need a motion to the approval of the ratification of settlement.
Mr. Chairman, based on the advice of legal counsel, I move to approve the ratification of settlement number 3.
And do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Boyer?
Yes?
Mr. Wasco?
Yes.
Mr. Chandler?
Yes.
Mr. Marchbanks?
Yes.
Mr. Tanner?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Item 4.04, ratification of settlement number 4.
Mr. Chairman, again, based on the advice of legal counsel, I move to approve the ratification of settlement number 4.
And do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Any discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Boyer?
Yes?
Mr. Marchbanks?
Yes.
Mr. Chandler?
Yes.
Mr. Tanner?
Yes.
Mr. Wasco?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Item 4.05, ratification of settlement number 5. Do we have a motion for ratification of settlement?
I'll move that we ratify and sticking with advice of legal counsel.
Do you have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Tanner?
Yes.
Mr. Marchbanks?
Yes.
Mr. Boyer?
Yes.
Mr. Wasco?
Yes.
Mr. Chandler?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Item 4.06, ratification of settlement number 6. Do we have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, Based on advice of legal counsel, again, I make a motion to ratify settlement number 6.
And do we have a second?
I'll second that motion.
Any discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Marchbanks?
Yes.
Mr. Wasco?
Yes.
Mr. Tanna?
Yes.
Mr. Chandler?
Yes.
Mr. Boyer?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Item 4.07, recommendation to charge cases number 160039 and 160058. Do you have a motion to charge? I think we have a recommendation to charge the funeral director, AIC, and the funeral home with 4717.14 disciplinary action. And also a recommendation to charge the funeral director, AIC, with 1 violation of ORC, and it's 4717.14 and 4717.09.
Mr. Chairman, based on reading these charges, I would like to make a motion that we suspend the funeral director's license, AIC, and the funeral home license via a hearing. So charging them and propose a suspension of the license via hearing.
I'll second that.
Any discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to ask a question in light of what the bill cites legislation and the recent Supreme Court decision. Would this action fall under the area of concern noted by Mr. Sykes in his article? Consequences in return, in regards to an ultimate no suspension, could there be, I would say, a response action from a suspended funeral director under the recent Supreme Court decision, I should say?
With possible personal liability for board members.
It was a question that came in my mind as I read the documents yesterday. I thought it was a fair question.
Would you like to respond, or have our Attorney General?
I mean, the licensee wouldn't be suspended until you had a hearing, and obviously there would be a
Yes.
process that would happen
Yes.
before you decide that. You could always be sued for anything, nobody can really predict that. For that court case, the issues are whether you have clearly articulated statute, which you're charging them with violations of your statute and rules.
Yes.
And then in order to be liable on antitrust, you have to be engaging in anti-competitive activity.
Correct. Restraint of trade, they mentioned.
Restraint of trade, and when you're actually talking about this, what I guess I would call the standard of care, I don't know if you use that term in this profession, but
Mhm.
I'm used to healthcare, so that's what we say. But if you're talking about actual conduct in the profession, you're not talking about advertising or commercially related things. Those are more likely to be attacked in that way. When you're talking about just a licensure issue with one particular person about specific conduct like that, that's less likely to be an antitrust violation. So, I can't guarantee no one's going to sue you, but this seems unlikely.
Thank you.
Any more discussion? Okay, roll call.
Mr. Wasco?
Yes.
Mr. Chandler?
Yes.
Mr. Boyer?
Yes.
Mr. Marchbanks?
Yes.
Mr. Tanna?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Item 4.08, cases recommended to close. There's several cases. Case number 160049, 160057, 160059, 1600060. So we need a motion to close.
I'll make the motion to close the cases.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Chandler?
Yes.
Mr. Marchbanks?
Yes.
Mr. Wasco?
Yes.
Mr. Tannen?
Yes.
Mr. Boyer?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Item 4.01, pending investigations.
I'm sorry, did you say 4.01?
4.09.
Oh, yes, yes.
Okay, sorry about that. Item 4.09, pending investigations. This is for our information.
Mr. Chairman, I just, looking at in the pending, I see that there are several labeled misappropriation pre-need funds, or in some cases, the funeral home's license has already been suspended. So I guess the sooner the better that we can get to the bottom of those. Basically.
Probably should provide an update on that, if that's okay, Mr.
If we could provide an update, that would be great.
Those cases are probably going to remain pending with us for an extended period of time. We have suspended that funeral home. We've been working with local prosecution on that case, and the prosecutor's office has seized all the records of the funeral home. So these are additional consumers who have made complaints to us. We've also sent those on to the prosecutor's office, but we don't at this point have the evidence from the funeral home to prove whether or not those are misappropriated or not. So we will probably not be able to conclude those cases until the prosecutor is a little further in their case and is able to share those records with us.
So all of these are concerning one facility?
Yes, the ones all of them that have the summary suspension in place
Okay.
are all the same one licensee and facility.
Okay.
Any more discussion? Item 4.10, Attorney General case status update.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I wanted to see if our AG can provide any information towards this particular agenda item.
Did you want to make a motion to go to executive session to discuss that? or-
Would you suggest that?
I think so. There's a proposed motion.
Okay. All right, I would make a motion, and this would be to discuss pending.
It would be pursuant to 121.22G1 and 121.22G3. The first one to consider the investigation of charges or complaints against a licensee, and G3 is for conferences with the board's attorney concerning disputes that are subject to pending or imminent court action.
Okay, I would like to make a motion to that effect, to go into executive session, stating the two reasons our AG gave us.
I'll second that motion. Any discussion? Roll call?
One moment, I'm just having Catherine check the motion. Mr. Wasco?
Yes?
Mr. Tannen?
Yes.
Mr. Marchbanks?
Yes.
Mr. Boyer?
Yes.
Mr. Chandler?
Yes.
We're adjourned into executive session.
Mr. Chairman, did you want the AG in there and the executive director?
Yes, the AG is going to be present.
I mean,
It's up to you. What do you
it's
think?
up to you.
I'm fine.
Yes.
Put the camera off? Really? Okay. Okay, we're out of executive session, back in with the.
Mr. Chairman, I think you need to entertain a motion to come out of executive session.
Yes.
Okay.
Actually,
No,
Motion to go in.
I didn't think so.
Just to clear yourself out.
actually, you can't.
Am I okay to proceed?
Richard.
We'll make sure he's okay
So
with
we're
it.
back in.
Okay. Okay, item 5.01, inspections. This shows all the inspections that are done by Eric Anderson and Troy Seahouse. Shows the dates of the inspections, where they went, what county, name of the funeral home, crematory. Any questions or discussions? Okay, we're gonna move on to 5.02, budget overview. And it's for fiscal year 16 as of January 14, 2016. Any questions or discussions? Okay, 5.03. It's that time of the year again. We've got till May 16th, Monday of 2016 for our financial disclosure statements. Everybody on the board needs to get those filled out and get them sent in. And we're moving on to 5.04, efforts to eliminate pre-need fraud.
Mr. Chairman, I asked for this report to be put together at our last month's meeting. And this is just everything that this board has done over the last 2 years with efforts trying to eliminate the pre-need issue that we have. And I hope all the members have seen that. Also, Mr. Taniff, if you've seen that.
Yes, I have.
Okay. One of the things I wanted to say, and how, because Mr. Tanner, you've made some comments previously about the pre-need issues. One of the things our industry did, our licensees, our licensees supported an increase in their licenses for the purpose of hiring more staff to regulate them. And we have now for the last 2 years have been collecting an increase in fees supported by the association and our licensees asking for more regulation. And we still haven't been able to provide that to them because we haven't been able to get the proper staffing that was required. And so, yeah, we're still trying to make an effort to get that proper staffing there that we need, but having 2 inspectors for the whole state really does not do the job. But our licensees, actually supported it and are welcoming more regulation because it helps everyone. So I just I know that we've talked about that before and I wanted you to be aware of that. Because that's why we put this together, so.
Any more discussion?
I have a question in regards to the good efforts, good faith efforts put forth by the funeral board staff, our inspectors I was just looking at that report. What, in your opinion, Mr. Waska, would be a sufficient staffing of our inspector team to make sure that we're being vigilant, protecting the public's interest in terms of vigorous inspections?
Well, we actually had a couple different reports. One actually hiring a forensic auditor on staff. Not necessarily an additional inspector or just maybe a pre-need auditor that would go in and do true audits of those pre-needs. So there's a bunch of things that were kicked around. And when the association and some of our members, when we were talking about it, that's why there's an effort by Ohio Funeral Directors Association who actually lobbied the legislature to increase our license fees for that purpose. And we have been collecting the money and have not been able to get that additional staffing on. because of the current administration not permitting new hires. But we have collected and are continuing to collect those fees.
And that was even brought up by the President Association to me, how we were collecting more money and more fees and increased the fees, and we still not hired that person.
And from what I understand, if I may continue, you're saying that the amount of fees collected would actually fund this forensic.
That's why, it was all put together, a formula and to an estimate of the operation of this. And then that's how the fees were set for that.
First time.
And the association is a little upset now because they feel like there's been, some wool pulled over their eyes, and it's truly not the case. We just cannot get the current administration, the governor's office, to permit the new hires.
And the first time I heard we wasn't getting somebody was when Tommy Tanner said he had gone up to the governor's office and came back here and said we were not getting any more staff to do anything. We had to do with what we had.
But yet our licensees are, once again, I'm going to say, because I think that says a lot, that they have supported a fee increase, an increase to their licenses for more regulation.
Mr. Boyer, I think, again, you mischaracterized what I have reported to this board. What I have reported to this board is that when this board considers passing an additional fee that the funeral homes charge, that fee is passed on to the general public.
The board didn't
But
pass
please let
the
me finish.
fees. That's incorrect. Your statement's incorrect.
Well, you're interrupting me now, Mr. Boyer.
Okay, well, I'm not correcting when you're finished. Thank you.
When you pass or implement or promulgate, whatever you want to call it, if it looks like a duck, quacks like a duck, it's a duck. If you pass on additional fees or require, authorize additional fees to be passed on to the consumer, it is a tax. What the governor's office would like to see is for us to look outside the box every way that we can to try to minimize prepaid funeral fraud.
Mr. Chairman, I have to say this, Mr. Tanner, though. You've been on this board for over a year now. I have not heard one suggestion come out of your mouth concerning that.
You guys are the experts.
Yeah, but we're asking upon you. You've been
And
put on the
everything-
board
Everything
too.
that I have,
You've
made a
come up-
motion. Everything I made a motion on, you guys overruled, because you're 3-2. You
No.
guys are in the industry. You're going to protect your turf.
That's actually insulting and false.
I wasn't here the last time at the last board meeting.
I wish you were, 'cause I-
Well, I'm sorry I missed it, but I think you've also missed a couple meetings this past year.
No, yeah, I
You
have.
have one in April that you're going to miss, but I understand the insults were here, that were made by you against me when I wasn't here to defend myself.
No, they weren't insults at all. They were just correcting that a lot of the statements you made, if you were quoted correctly, you might not have been, were false.
Okay.
But I'm just saying, one of the things is that our industry, our licensees asked and supported to pay more money, to regulate them more, to get the bad apples out, that 1% that we have. That says a lot for our
What
industry.
ideas have you come up with?
Can I answer, respond up to these?
Let me ask Mr. Wasco a question, Mr. Boyer. What ideas have you come up with, short of increasing administrative costs and increasing the cost to the taxpayer? What ideas have you come up with
Can I
to regulate this
I'm going to
industry?
answer that question because I've
Okay.
asked to speak.
You've come up with nothing.
Can I speak?
You're the president.
That was done through OFDA and John Magoo, their lobbyist, and the lawmakers who increased the fees. This board did not increase those fees. We just follow the law that's written and the law that's made of the land. We had nothing to do with it. It was the association working with their lawmakers and increased
Mr.
those
Boyer, when you
fees.
start hiring
We
more
can-
staff, who pays for that?
They
cost?
did it, and that was their reasoning
Mr.
for
Boyer.
increasing the fee. I'm speaking right now, you let me speak. They increased the fees so we would hire more staff, so they could research and find this pre-need fraud. And that was their idea, it wasn't this board's idea.
What have you come up with?
We're doing everything all the time. We're working on legislation
That's
right
what I
now that's
thought,
going to
nothing.
prevent.
Since I've been on
Would
this
you ask
board-
me a question?
Since
Would
I've
you
been on
stop?
this board,
Would you
you've come up
stop?
with nothing.
You need to, you
So we
asked
do
me a
prepaid
question, so when you
funeral
ask me a question, you need to allow me to respond. Your question is, what have we done?
Nothing.
4 years ago, we talked to Smith. One of his questions was how to stop pre-need fraud. He said, Greg, how can we stop pre-need fraud? I said, no more depositing of consumers' funds into the funeral home accounts. All the pre-need fraud that has occurred is where money has been placed into the accounts, the money was never invested in the insurance and has never been invested. We have been working on this for 4 years. Schaefer is carrying this bill right now, and the verbiage in there explains that. It's in there.
All I
So what
hear-
have we done? We've changed the rule, the wording of the law.
All I hear is talk, and nothing's been done by you.
That is not a true
Mr.
statement.
Chairman, I
All
would just-
hear
You're
is
the
you-
chairman.
You come this meeting and that's all you do, talk. You've not done one thing. You've not attended any meeting with the associations. You've not gone out and talked to anybody in the investment company.
I've tried.
We, even when these
My
gentlemen
motions.
here came here and I asked you to help them to go talk to the insurance company, you said you didn't have time for that.
Never asked me to talk to the insurance
Yes, we
company.
did. It's in
That is
the,
not my responsibility.
so you don't want to do anything, right?
No, you don't want to do anything.
Let's get back to the,
Mr. Chairman, I'm just, to end this, I would refer Mr. Tanner to 5.04 if he has not read it. If he's read it, if he can read that, this clearly shows the actions that the board's taken over the last 2 years concerning that. So
Right.
his comment of us doing nothing is totally false.
he chooses not to see that.
Well, I'm just referring, he might have not seen this because he was having computer problems, but this is a very good comprehensive report.
Okay, we're moving on, item 5.05. State Senator Bill Seitz plans to write legislation to redesign the board. Well, if people had a chance to read his article of reconfiguring some boards.
One comment I have, I think it's unconstitutional, to tell you the truth. You know, a person has the right to receive a verdict or to be judged by by their peers, and having something like a czar controlling these boards, I don't think it's very productive. You know, we are licensees along with board member or with public members that during the process learn a little bit about our industry and some of the rules and regulations, and we are truly judging. You know, the licensees are being judged by their peers, and you know, looking at some of the changes that one wants to make, I just think it's an unconstitutional thing. That's just my comment.
Well, before we adjourn, Mr. Chairman, as this board will recall, there was a records retention issue.
We're talking about Bill Seitz here at this time.
Oh, I thought we were done.
No, we're still discussing this. I think it also would be a mistake to have non-licensed people to go in onto a funeral home, to even look at the pre-need, to even possibly look into the prep room and see somebody that's not licensed in the industry, to know whether somebody was properly embalmed, or if somebody's keeping their sharps containers cleared out, if somebody's doing their disposal of hazardous materials. I don't know how somebody who's not licensed in our business would even have the expertise to go into a funeral home and to oversee something like that. They would have no idea. They would have no idea where to work or to look. And we're regulated by OSHA. We're regulated by the Federal Trade Commission. We go through OSHA training at the funeral home. And to see somebody that's going to regulate the industry who absolutely have no idea anything about our practices, I think would be an injustice.
And I don't think it affects just our board. I'm sure any board is going to say that we have a different type of industry, that it's going to be hard for somebody from a different industry to come in here and regulate or ask questions about without knowing anything about how to participate in that industry. I mean, we're governed heavily by the Federal Trade Commission. It seems like they, even when they rewrote their laws, that they asked, participation from funeral directors because they wanted to know who was going to affect and how it was going to affect, and that's a federal organization.
And that was the Federal Trade Commission that involved the funeral homes to help write the regulations. So I'm not sure how a state agency would supersede the Federal Trade Commission. I mean, insurance company's the biggest business in the United States, and it's not regulated by anybody. I mean, I just don't see how it could be done.
Let's talk about the records retention policy.
That's not on the
As,
agenda.
it doesn't
the
matter,
record
before we
retention.
adjourn,
The record
I can
retention
bring
was
up
set by
anything I
DX.
want. We don't have a record retention policy, Mr. Chairman. And so as
No,
you...
we do have a records retention
As you
policy
recall,
under DAS.
Sir, if you'd stop interrupting me so I could finish.
I'm not, but you make false statements. I'm not gonna let you make
I'm gonna
false
make a
statements.
motion that this court adopt a records retention
Court, this is
policy.
a court?
I'm sorry?
You call this a court?
No, I'm gonna make a motion that this board
Okay.
adopt a records retention policy requiring the staff and executive director to retain any and all correspondence or emails that come in and out of this office, so that we don't have the issue of what happened a year and a half ago, where there is an issue that's still outstanding regarding the falsification of emails, or the alleged falsification of emails, by either the dispatch reporters or the executive director, who was then quoted in the Columbus Dispatch article dated October 13th, 2015, where she stated to Mr. Randy Ludlow that Ms. Nykamp responded that she had falsely accused TANF of altering email messages. With that, my motion is that this board adopt a records retention policy requiring the executive director and the staff of this organization to retain any and all emails, correspondence for a period not to exceed 75 years, upon the advice of counsel, similar to what other boards' retention policies are.
Second.
Any discussion?
Didn't we ask the AG to look into this at one time or not? Or one, not you, I think it was the past.
Yeah, I think it was prior. I think, if I recall correctly, the question was, can you have a different retention policy than what the general one DAS has? You can keep records for longer than DAS says, you can't make yours shorter than DAS says.
And then it wasn't very expensive all of them, because doesn't it have to be sent someplace? Didn't we talk about that? And the records have to be archived, was going to cost so much.
I'm sure there is some cost of storage. But yeah,
I think it's interesting also, I think when you brought this up the last time, I asked you what the record retention was of the cosmetology board, and you had no idea at that time.
We're talking about this board, Mr. Boyd.
Right.
I have a motion, it's been seconded.
Right, we're in a discussion. I'm just bringing it up. You had no idea of the record
Well, why don't we
retention
ask
for
our
the
counsel what her
cosmetology.
recommendation would be? She's right here.
We have a motion on the floor, so.
You have a recommendation?
for the length of time?
Yes.
I think if you're referring to the 75 years, if you're referring to a motion, or the memo that I wrote before, that was talking about renewal applications, not email
Do
correspondence.
you have a recommendation for how long we should retain records?
I mean, that's really a policy decision, not a legal question.
What has your experience been
I-
with other boards?
And most people
Honestly,
follow.
Yeah,
I
we're just
don't
talking about
know.
this-
I would imagine it would, I'm completely speculating here, but I'm sure it's not 75 years. I would imagine it would be, somewhere between 6 months and 5 years, I would guess. But
Yeah,
I don't
well-
have no, I couldn't have, I don't really have an idea of what each board does.
See, the problem with 6 months is, by the time that this
That's pretty
issue
short, yeah.
hit the papers, then we were beyond the 6-month period. And then there's the allegation that, well, I can't find the original emails that went between Ms. Nykamp and the Columbus Dispatch editors and the Columbus Dispatch reporters. So I think it should be at least a minimum of 5 years.
What's DAS?
I don't know, honestly. I can find out.
If I
Do
may,
you know that?
I have experience with ODOT, and we have long-lasting bridges that last 50 years, and we are under warranty in many cases. That's 25 years at ODOT for engineering records. So anywhere, the minimum of 5 strikes me as.
But that, wouldn't it be a safety issue, engineering a bridge and
Yes.
traffic and public going over that bridge?
Yes.
And
Well, I'm not saying 25, I'm just saying
Yeah.
that it goes, you have record retention policies that go way beyond 5 years.
Right, but Mr. Boyer, if records were falsified, that's a crime, and I think surely you would want at least 5
there's
years.
been no records falsified. I know you make those allegations, but
Well, the allegations have actually been made between the dispatch and Ms. Nykamp. So I
I'm
would
sorry.
recommend a minimum of 5 years.
I do have to say one thing. It's completely false that you said that that record has not been maintained. That record is on DAS's server. It's been provided to the board president. It's been provided to you. The original email is maintained, has been maintained, is still maintained, and has never been changed, altered, destroyed, eliminated, whatever you want to call it, and has been provided to everybody who has asked for it.
I'd make that we have a minimum 5-year retention policy. I think that protects the public.
Currently DAS, is that what you have here?
DAS's is at 6 months.
6 months.
Are you amending your?
Yeah, I'm amending my motion that we have a records retention policy for a minimum of 5 years.
I would second that amendment.
does that cost more money to the taxpayers to retain? All that, you were talking about not trying to pass on costs to taxpayers or to the government. Does that cost more?
It's worth it.
But you said you were told that we were not to pass costs on to people.
It's worth it.
But it's okay in this case.
I think, Mr. Boyer, you have an obligation to protect the general public.
The emails have been
from
provided, the
falsification
emails are
of
still
public
being
records.
stored. The emails are still there, they're not gone.
We don't have a records retention policy, Mr. Boyer.
Nor does your board.
We're talking about this
I'm
board.
talking about your board.
This isn't a Cosmo board, this is a funeral board meeting.
So then you don't have a,
All right, well, let the record reflect that my motion was seconded, and Mr. Boyer refuses.
We're still in discussion.
Refuses to promulgate.
No,
or
we're not
set to a
refusing to do
vote-
anything. We're still in
or set to a
discussion.
vote, a 5-year minimum.
so discussion's
records
over,
retention
we're ready to go
policy.
to a vote?
I just have one thing.
No,
I'm
we're
not
in
voting.
discussion. It's
I
part-
am
you
not
wanna violate
voting.
Robert's Rules of Order, and you want to violate the rights of this board?
No, you want to
And you want to violate the high revised
You wanna
code
violate
and the
the
way the
rights of
board
the general
operates?
public, Mr.
Is that how you operate?
No, that's how you operate.
Mr. Chairman, I am not voting on this motion. I would like to see this motion maybe come up next month. I want to see what DAS has, and I would adopt their.
You don't have to
their policy.
vote, so we have 4 members that will vote.
I'm stating my concerns
Right,
with
You just
this.
stated that you wouldn't vote.
I said I would vote no.
Okay.
Again, I would vote against this motion because next month I would like to see truly what DAS has, and not just people
Mr.
talking.
Boyer, you think it's funny?
No, you're smiling at me.
I'm not smiling.
Yes, you are. I'm looking at
I
you,
don't
smiling.
think it's funny that you don't want to protect
No,
the
you're
general
smiling at
public.
us. The emails are still there.
Mr. Wasco, I can bring up record retention policies for Department of Administrative Service on this computer at any point if you want that information. Would you like me to look for that?
I'm
My
not making a
motion's been seconded.
I'm not
so-
making a motion. Maybe I'll make it next month.
Okay.
Any more discussion?
Just one, Mr. Chairman, and this is in regard to your concern about additional costs. With the digital world, with the cloud, I would expect that there would be flexibility to retain records for, 5 years. As an executive director, as a deputy director of ODOT, I always was uncomfortable with the 6-month rule with DAS, and we maintained our records 5 years. And in fact, we had records that went back 10 years. So, and a lot of that can be accomplished by using existing technology without, hopefully, passing on costs to citizens and our consumers.
Because I think like if you went and looked at my licensing, where I applied back in '84, all my records are still down there since 1984. And I believe my father's records have been down there ever since the early 60s. So, and those are all hard copies. Those are not digital. So they do retain records. So for somebody to think that no records are being maintained,
No,
that records are being wiped out or being shredded.
I was just addressing the issue of cost.
I know, but I'm just saying, the records are being maintained, even currently as is, with no policy.
Is the motion emails or is the motion all records?
All records.
All records, okay. I'm still voting no. I think we should have some sort of policy, the board, but I want to look further into it because we do have a lot of records. We have a lot of paper records.
Yeah.
And so those would have to get transposed digitally.
Digitally.
And so there's some cost to that. And a cost is a cost. It gets passed on to someone, right, Mr. Dana? So I am going to vote no on it again, but I am in favor of having some sort of retention policy for the board.
What was that last time, you know? 'Cause
The
I remember
records go
talking
back
to
about it.
1900s.
We talked about it, and I thought we were waiting for something.
Our records go back to 1900.
I thought we were waiting on
1900,
something
yeah.
on the AG's
I know, it was never resolved.
I mean,
Correct, it was never resolved.
I've got 115 years of records in my business. This place has 115 years of records, and they're still here, and they're
It's still not
downstairs.
resolved because you guys, again, want to keep doing nothing.
We're not doing nothing.
Then vote on it.
Yeah. You done discussing?
Yep.
Okay, roll call.
I do have 5 years on the motion, but this was already printed before. Trying to refresh it. Mr. Roscoe,
What is the motion?
motion that this board adopt a record retention policy to require the staff and the executive director to retain any and all documents and emails not to exceed 5 years.
Well, you got 75 up there.
It's not, I just said that it won't refresh over here.
I'm not sure if you mean not to exceed, that seems like the opposite. Shouldn't it be a minimum
At
of
least.
5 years?
At least 5 years.
At least 5 years. Do you want to make that a friendly amendment?
Yes.
It's not showing here. So I have email, documents and emails for at least 5 years. I'm gonna go back and change it. Go back. There we go. That's the only way I can get the motions up here for you. Are you ready for me to take the vote?
Roll call.
Mr. Wasco?
No.
Mr. Marchbanks?
Yes.
Mr. Tannen?
Yes.
Mr. Boyer?
I'd like to make a statement before more research is done for what other boards are doing. At this time, I am voting no.
Mr. Chandler?
I'd like to reiterate the chairman's concern and vote no.
Motion fails.
Any more discussions? Any more items not on the agenda that we want to discuss?
I'd just like to say, in behalf of my possession, our profession, I do take it personally. I see no reason why it would benefit me and my firm to help folks, other folks, or justify or let other folks steal premium money. It doesn't do any good for me. It doesn't do any good for our inspectors or licensed funeral directors. It doesn't do any good for any of these guys. It doesn't do any, I see no positive that I would want other folks in our profession to take advantage of consumers. I take that personally because I don't feel I've ever done that. And I feel that, you took a long time to get your degree as a professional, and I did too. And I just don't see any positive where it would behoove me to do that. So I do take offense to that. That's all I got.
Any more discussion? Meeting adjourned at 2:16, January 21st, 2016.
Motion to adjourn?
So,
All in favor?
You don't have to have a motion to adjourn.
We don't?
No, you